Afternoon session 12:50 p.m. Jury not present.
The court said, "Please be seated. I'm going to have the witness step out."
Witness not present.
The court said, "So first of all, the government raised the issue that there was an arbitration. And what was established on direct was that G Clubs made a claim against Crane for certain monies, and ultimately there was a decision in favor of G Clubs after the testimony of Reyes Molinares and Izquierdo. I've reviewed the testimony of the witness from yesterday, and I'm calling your attention to Ms. Schroff's questions that start. Did you want the contract with Crane to be terminated? To exactly. They never were done with you. Correct. And his answers to those two questions as well as everything that came in between. And I believe that the jury is left with the impression that the witness and Crane were trying to distance themselves from their relationship with G Clubs. But the letter contradicts that. It shows that Crane was trying to keep this relationship alive. And I'm going to allow it to come in to the extent that it can be authenticated. So let's bring the witness back."
Witness present.
The court said, "And if you'll have the jurors brought in, please."
Jury present.
The court said, "Please be seated. Members of the jury, I had intended on calling you back in at 12:30, but something arose that is not the fault of the parties or myself, and so I apologize for the delay. You may continue with your questioning."
Ms. Schroff said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
By Ms. Schroff.
Sir, you're familiar with G Clubs, correct?
Yes.
And you were never asked, as part of your job description, to design any website for G Clubs, correct?
Me personally design?
Yes.
I had different tasks, so might have been to review the G Club website, yeah.
You were not on the designing team of the website, correct?
Designing team?
Yes.
No.
You were not on the marketing team for G Clubs, correct?
No, not officially.
You were not unofficially any part of the marketing for G Clubs, correct?
I was involved with a few items, a few tasks.
What items? Name an item that you marketed for G Club.
Like, for example, the G Summit.
Okay. You marketed the G Summit?
Not marketed, but looked at it, looked at the location.
Which location?
Where they were going to have the G Summit.
Which location did you look at?
A hotel in Puerto Rico.
So you want to visit a hotel in Puerto Rico as a possible site for the G Summit?
Yes.
Okay. What other things did you do for G Club's marketing?
Just, like I said, minor tasks. That was part of the job. Minor tasks to help that Yvette used to ask me for help on the G Club side.
And were you involved at all in G Fashion?
Just on the finance side.
You did not play any role in designing the G Fashion website, correct?
Maybe the checkout process online.
You helped.
They needed somebody to help them create a merchant.
So you helped them create a merchant for G Fashion?
I was trying to find them a merchant processor.
And did you find them one?
It was very difficult. I don't recall if they were approved by someone.
Ms. Schroff said, "I move to strike." My question was, sir, did you find them one?
The court said, "Sustained. It's stricken. Just answer the question."
Can you repeat the question?
Did you find them one?
I found, yeah.
Excuse me?
I did.
And who is that?
I don't recall the name.
Okay. Did you help organize events for G Clubs?
Like I said, just location.
Did you help organize a raffle for a car?
Not directly, no.
Did you play any role in the actual provision of services to G Clubs?
No.
Now you testified on direct about G Clubs' banking issues, correct?
Correct.
Accounts were being closed down, you testified, correct?
Correct.
And some of the accounts were closed down because there were hits from OFAC, correct?
Some accounts, yeah.
And what does OFAC stand for?
Office of Foreign Asset Control.
And is it fair to say that OFAC has a list of people that are subject to sanctions?
Can you repeat the question?
Is it fair to say that OFAC maintains a list of people that are subject to sanctions, correct?
Yes.
And banks do not want to do business with people who are on the OFAC list, correct?
Correct.
And there were wires that came in that were flagged as coming from people who were on the OFAC list, but they really weren't. Correct?
Correct.
And in those instances, what you and Alex H. did is you substantiated that the people who had sent the money were not on the OFAC list. Correct?
We asked for ID, a date of birth. Correct.
So that you could tell the bank that these people were not in fact on OFAC, correct?
So we could provide it to the bank and then make a determination.
And you did that, right? You collected IDs, passport photos, or other IDs, and you sent them to the bank. Correct?
Alex did. He was in charge of G clubs.
He copied you on the emails, correct?
He might have.
And he forwarded you emails, too, correct, about this matter?
Again, he might have.
Let me show you what is marked as Defense Exhibit 31189. Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
Is it an email sent to you?
Yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, at this time the defense moves Defense Exhibit into evidence. I'm sorry. I lost my number there. But 31,189.
The court said, Any objection?
Ms. Murray said, Yes, objection, hearsay.
The court said, Step up.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, So this is an email from the witness to Alex H. in which the witness states that there's some personal identifying information for several individuals. You're objecting on the basis of hearsay?
Ms. Murray said, Yes, Your Honor. It's being offered for the truth that the people are on an OFAC list and that's the relevance of why the defendant, or the witness, is sending it to other people. It clearly doesn't fall under any exception. It doesn't go to his state of mind. Completing the narrative is not a hearsay exception. To the extent the defense intends to argue that that's the basis for introducing it, there's no proper basis to introduce it.
Ms. Shrofa said, We're simply showing that this was a topic that was discussed. We do not have any.
The court said, He's testified that it's a topic discussed. And so,
Ms. Shrofa said, and that the information flowed from Alex H., who was in charge of G clubs, to Mr. Khaled, who was in charge of banking, and it flowed from him to the bank. We have no interest in saying whether these people were or were not on the OFAC list. And we don't intend to argue whether or not each one of these individuals were on the OFAC list. The only thing we're trying to show is that there were people that were alleged to have been on the OFAC list. They sent the information along to show that they weren't with their bona fides.
The court said, I thought it was an email from the witness to Alex H. Am I wrong? Is it Alex H. to the witness?
Ms. Shrofa said, There's two. It's from Alex H. to this gentleman. He received it because he's been in charge of banking. And then he sends the email forward.
Ms. Murray said, All of the facts that Ms. Shroff said have already been established through testimony. It's hearsay within hearsay. The witness is responding to Alex H. And clearly, contrary to the representations. They are trying to use this for its truth, or at least it will confuse the jury. Whether it's being introduced for its truth, and the court has an obligation to keep it out. Particularly where there's no hearsay exception to offer it.
Mr. Kumraju said, First of all, the court doesn't have an obligation to keep out evidence that's admissible. 2. To the extent they continue to say that we are making representations that aren't true, there's a transcript. They are free to object during summation and Your Honor can rule. But the third thing I will say is that there is no rule of evidence that says because a witness has testified to something, that the party is not allowed to offer additional evidence corroborating it. That's why the government.
The court said, How about cumulative evidence?
Mr. Kumraju said, It's one email, Your Honor. I can't see how one email is.
The court said, I'm not going to let it in.
Mr. Kumraju said, Okay.
Continued on next page. In open court. By Ms. Shrofa.
Alex H. provided you with biographical data for people, correct, that were allegedly on the OFAC list?
What do you mean by that, biographical?
Passport ID.
Passport.
And you would forward that to the bank, correct?
Either me or Alex, yeah.
And that was part of your normal job duties there, correct?
Correct.
By the way, do you know if Miles Guo is on the OFAC list?
Not for sure, no.
You worked for Miles Guo, you said, right?
Yes.
And you didn't learn whether or not Miles Guo was on the OFAC list.
Ms. Murray said, asked and answered, Your Honor.
The court said, sustained.
Did you know there was an Interpol red notice for Miles Guo?
Again, no.
Now, as part of your job duties, you participated in job interviews to hire people, correct?
Some, yeah.
You interviewed a person named Miguel Rivera, correct?
Correct.
And you were part of an interview team, correct?
Correct.
You recorded that interview, correct?
Correct.
And that was a Zoom interview, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, at this time I move DX 60535 into evidence.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60535 received in evidence.
So, if I could just play for you, I think it's 18. While they're setting up, you remember this job interview, correct?
Yeah.
And who are the participants in the Zoom meeting?
It was me, Miguel, who was being interviewed, I believe Ross, Alex, and Maya.
And who's Maya?
Maya was my assistant and worked for the group as well.
And who paid for her work? Who paid her checks?
I believe Lexington.
You believe Lexington?
Yeah. Everybody got paid, I don't know how she got paid.
My question was not how much she got paid, sir.
I don't know how she got paid. I didn't do payroll. Go ahead.
You go.
No, you go.
You don't know who paid her, correct?
No.
Okay.
Audio played.
Ms. Strofa said, We can stop there. Do you recognize that voice?
That's me.
And you remember the statement that was just played, correct?
Yeah.
Did you in fact know the people behind G Clubs for 4 years at that time?
I was referring to Yvette.
You were referring to one individual?
I was referring to Yvette.
Okay. So your testimony is when you said that you knew people behind G Clubs for 4 years. You were only referring to Yvette Wang.
Yes.
Ms. Strofa said, Okay. Could we go to the next clip, please?
Audio played.
Ms. Strofa said, You can stop there. Do you recognize the voice, sir?
Yes.
Whose voice is that?
Ross.
Where did Ross work?
When I first met him, the rule of law.
My question was, during this recording, where does Ross work?
I couldn't tell you. It was the rule of law.
Your testimony is that Ross worked for rule of law during this time?
Ms. Murray said, Objection, Your Honor.
I'll withdraw that. And he is participate, I withdraw it. Sorry. And he was participating in this interview with you, correct?
Correct.
He's talking about this person Miguel Rivera's experience bringing order to chaos, correct?
That's what he said.
And he's interviewing somebody to come join G Clubs so that there can be order to chaos, correct?
I don't know what he meant in that.
Did you talk to him before you started the interview to prepare for the interview of Mr. Rivera?
I don't remember if there was an official preparation for an interview.
How about an unofficial preparation?
Again, I don't remember.
How about an ad hoc preparation?
Ms. Murray said, Objection, Your Honor.
The court said, sustained. Let's go.
For what position was Mr. Rivera being interviewed?
I believe finance.
In what company?
G Club Puerto Rico.
Thank you. Ms. Strofa said, May I have the next clip, please?
Audio played.
Ms. Strofa said, We can stop there. Whose voice is that, sir?
That's mine.
And is it fair to say that Mr. Miles Guo had no awareness that you were interviewing Miguel Rivera?
Ms. Murray said, Objection.
The court said, sustained. He cannot speak about what Mr. Guo was or was not aware of.
Did you tell Mr. Guo that you were participating in an interview for Miguel Rivera?
No, not directly.
How did you tell him indirectly?
Maybe through Yvette.
Maybe?
Maybe Yvette told him. I don't know.
You don't know, correct?
I don't.
You're just speculating when you say maybe Yvette told him.
Maybe, yeah, maybe Yvette told him.
It's a speculation on your part, correct?
I don't know if Yvette told him.
Okay.
The court said, "Would you step up, please?"
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, "This witness has trouble with big words. Words like admonition and speculation. And so I ask that you speak in a simpler way so that he can answer the questions efficiently."
Ms. Strofa said, "Okay. I'm sorry. I did not, okay."
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, "You may continue."
By Ms. Shrofa.
Sir, you're just guessing that Yvette told Mr. Gov't, correct?
Again, I'm not sure if she told him.
Okay. And when you were speaking on the clip that we just played to you, you were participating in an interview for this person to have a job at G Clubs, right?
Correct.
Now on direct you testified, did you not? That there came a point when you used the money taken from Crane to buy certain properties for yourself and your wife. Correct?
I used the money to invest in properties.
Okay. And how did you invest in these properties? Did you purchase them?
I purchased them, yeah.
Okay. And how many properties did you purchase?
Total of 7.
And a total of 7 properties. Were they all in Florida?
Yes.
Were they all multi-dwelling homes with swimming pools?
No.
Okay. And how many of them were multi-dwelling homes with swimming pools?
What do you mean, multi-dwelling? Single family. What do you mean exactly?
I withdraw the question. These were homes that had more than one bedroom, correct?
Correct.
And they had other amenities in the apartment, correct?
Correct.
You were trying to run these properties as Airbnbs, correct?
3 of them.
Okay. And you testified on direct that you put these properties in your wife's name, correct?
Correct.
And you remember saying on your direct that you did that because of any lawsuit or anything might happen to me. The properties are in someone else's name that I trust, correct?
I think that's my testimony, but can I?
And you then testified that you thought some harm could come to you, some physical harm, correct?
Correct.
And what year were these properties bought, sir? Do you remember?
21 and 22.
In 2021, you were still working at East 64th Street, correct?
Not the entire year.
Okay. But for part of 2021, you were still working there, correct?
Yeah, until July.
Okay. So you went in and out of East 64th Street. So at that time, you weren't scared that anything could happen to you, correct?
Not until the dispute happened, no.
Okay. So before the dispute happened and you bought these properties, you still put them in your wife's name, right?
Yeah.
In fact, you put these properties in your wife's name because you were in bankruptcy. And if you put them in your name, the trustee would seize them. Isn't that the truth?
No.
So what would happen if you put the properties in your name? What do you think the trustee would do with that?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection. Calls for speculation."
The court said, "Sustained."
Did you have an obligation to report purchase of property to the trustee in bankruptcy?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
You don't know your obligations to your bankruptcy trustee?
Well, at that time it's a Chapter 13 reconstruction of debt. So the entire debt was scheduled to be paid through that Chapter 13.
Right. And you had to give the...
I don't.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know if I needed to let them know.
You didn't need to give them a list of your assets?
That's before.
That's
when you apply.
That's when you apply.
Millimeter whom?
Not when you have a payment obligation.
Again, I don't know.
You're still under an obligation, sitting here right now, right, to the bankruptcy trustee to pay?
Yeah, I have 2 payments for $8,000, I think.
Right. And you still have to make those payments, correct?
Correct.
And isn't it true that you're supposed to give them a list of your assets so they can make sure that the payment schedule is set properly?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection. Asked and answered."
The court said, "Sustained."
Who is Roman Yagidiv? Ms. Shrofa said, "Let me spell that for you, Madam Court Reporter. Roman Yagidiv.
He was a friend of mine and a partner.
And when you described him to others while you were working at GTV, you called him just a contact, correct?
I don't know what I called him.
How about when you testified on the 10th, and you testified on direct that he was just a contact? Ms. Shrofa said, "Can we pull up that transcript for him, please?" Do you recall giving that testimony?
Do you want me to read it?
I just want to make sure it comports with your recollection.
Yeah, it says, "and a friend that I knew."
Right. That's who he was, right?
So, yeah.
Okay. And you used, how do you pronounce his name so I don't get it wrong? Is it Yagudiv?
How do you say it?
Okay. I'll refer to him as Roman, okay?
Okay. That's easier.
Okay. And you introduced Roman to people at G Clubs so that he could help provide services, correct?
Correct.
You introduced him because, according to you, he had immigration contacts and experience, correct?
Correct.
And you wanted to employ him or have G Clubs employ him so that he could help people get a passport in Antigua, correct?
Yeah, Yvette was interested in employing him. Correct.
Right. And Yvette, Ms. Wang, interviewed him, correct? Or talked to you about him, correct?
She had spoken to him directly.
And she declined to utilize his services, correct?
I don't know.
In fact, she told you that they already had people in Antigua who could perform the same services, correct?
No. She never said that.
And she sent you a text telling you to contact them directly in Antigua, correct?
Again, I don't remember.
Okay. Now with this gentleman Roman, you started another company all of your own, correct?
Can you be more specific?
Sure. You and he formed a company called Royalton, correct?
Royal?
Royalton.
No.
You didn't?
Royal.
Royal? Just Royal?
I think Royal Asset Group, something like that.
I'm sorry?
Royal Asset Group. I'm not sure the exact name.
Okay, but the two of you opened it together, correct?
I think there was a third person and a fourth. There was I think 4 people.
Is it still in existence now?
Yeah. No activity.
I'm sorry?
It was no activity whatsoever.
Okay. You also started another company, right? Called Kanji Capital Group, correct?
That was started when I was still working for the group.
Which group?
For Gov't and Yvette.
And you pitched Kanji Capital Group as a possible private equity to Ms. Wang, correct?
That's what she wanted me to create.
Could you? Ms. Shrofa said, "I would just move to strike, Your Honor, and ask him to please answer the question."
The court said, "You can answer the question. Your answer is stricken. Please read back the question."
Record read.
She asked me to create it.
Your testimony is Ms. Wang asked you to create a company for her in June of 2021?
It was before June 21.
When before June of 2021?
We started talking about this in February.
Okay. And when did you culminate it, according to you?
You mean when it was created?
I'm sorry. I take that back. You created a brochure of the company, correct?
Possible.
Do you recall it or no?
The court said, "So don't say what's possible. Say whether or not."
I don't remember.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?"
The court said you may.
What's your question?
You created a pamphlet or a brochure promoting the Kanji private equity capital, correct?
The court said, "The question is whether or not this document refreshes your recollection as to whether you did so."
I didn't physically create it, but I'm familiar definitely with Kanji Capital Group. I said I didn't physically create this, but I am familiar with kanji.
Well, how are you familiar with kanji?
I own it with a partner.
Who's the partner?
Stephen Andy.
Who is Stephen Landy?
He was initially hired by G Clubs and the G Group.
But who is he to you?
I worked with him before. We belong to the same banking group.
You helped Stephen Landy get a job at G Club?
I introduced him to Yvette.
You introduced him to Yvette, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you and Stephen Landy together made this company, correct?
We were asked to, yeah.
Excuse me?
We were asked to create this company.
Okay. But you created it, right?
I said we were asked to create it by Yvette, this company.
Okay. But you created it then, right?
We asked, yes.
Okay. And you sent it around, correct?
What do you mean?
Who did you send that document to?
I don't remember.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. May I take it back from him? And you wanted this private equity company to be supported by whom?
Ms. Murray said, objection to relevance.
The court said, I'll allow the question.
What do you mean supported?
Who was going to fund it?
It was going to have investors.
And who were the investors to be?
When the company was created, it was going to be promoted and it was going to be from the network of Yvette.
And this was in June of 2021, correct?
No. Like I said, we started working on this project in February.
Right. And when did the project come to a final conclusion? You started in February. When did it come to a conclusion?
It continued, but again, we never had any success with it.
Okay. But my question is, when did it come to a conclusion and you sent it to Yvette?
What do you mean conclusion, like created the company?
Yeah.
So we started in February. By the time it was created in Cayman, it was like probably June, May, June. Something like that.
And in May or June, you sent it to Yvette, right?
Again, I don't remember sending this exact document to Yvette.
All right. Well, let me see if I can refresh your recollection.
Just an attachment. I don't know if this is it.
My question was, does that refresh your recollection that the kanji PDF was sent to Yvette on June 21st of 2021? Does that document refresh your recollection?
Again, it's a PDF. I don't know if this is it.
The court said, so the question is whether or not looking at that document actually causes you to remember that this happened.
The witness said, that I've sent the PDF? Yes, I've sent the PDF to Yvette regarding kanji.
And you recall, sitting here today, that the PDF regarding kanji that you sent to Yvette was sent on June 27th of 2021, correct?
Correct.
Shortly after that, on July 11th, you were told that Crane wanted to terminate their contract with you, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Schrofa said, could I show just the witness DX60540?
The court said yes.
Would you prefer a hard copy, sir, or should we just flip it for you on the machine?
No. Can you get me one?
Hard copy?
Please.
Sure.
Okay.
That's the termination agreement. That's the notice of termination, correct?
Correct.
And you recognize it to be so, correct?
That's the response.
It's the response to the notice of termination, correct?
Yeah, a response to the notice of termination.
And you recognize it to be so, correct?
Yes, and from Chris Warren.
Thank you. Ms. Schrofa said, I move DX60540 into evidence.
Ms. Murray said, may I have voir dire?
The court said you may.
Voir dire examination. By Ms. Murray.
Mr. Khaled, did you write this document?
No.
Did you see this document in or around the time that it was sent in July of 2021?
I don't remember if Warren Law Group sent it to me or not.
Do you know whether this is a fair and accurate copy of a letter that Chris Warren sent to Limari Reyes on July 9th of 2021?
No, I would not know.
Ms. Murray said, we object, Your Honor.
By Ms. Schrofa.
Does the document have a letterhead on top, sir?
It does.
What's the little painting, the photo over there?
I have no idea.
Okay. Who's Christopher Warren?
Ms. Murray said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, I'm laying a foundation for the document.
The court said, you've already asked who Christopher Warren was.
Ms. Schrofa said, I meant on the letterhead. I don't mean in general, I just meant on the letterhead.
The court said, so he's not reading from the document because the document has not yet been authenticated.
By Ms. Schrofa.
Who was Todd Culkin?
Who is Todd Culkin?
Right.
He was my attorney.
And did your attorney in fact send a response to the G Club notice of termination?
He might have, yeah.
And that's this document, right?
This looks like it.
Thank you. Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, we renew our application to have the document admitted into evidence.
Ms. Murray said, same objection, but nothing further on that point.
The court said, I'm going to admit the document.
Defendant's Exhibit 60540 received in evidence.
Ms. Shrofa said, Thank you, Your Honor.
By Ms. Shrofa.
You can set that aside. Now, Mr. Khaled, on March 8th of 2023, you signed a non-prosecution agreement with these 3 lawyers, correct?
Can you repeat the date?
March 8th. Do you recall the date of your non-prosecution agreement? Maybe I have the wrong date. Let me check. I do have the right date. March 8th of 2023. Do you recall that?
Yeah. I'm not sure what the exact date of the signature.
Okay. And you testified on direct that you were approached by the FBI and you did not immediately speak to them, correct?
Correct.
You were approached on July 26th of 2021, correct?
No.
Okay. You tell me when you were approached.
November of 2021.
You were approached by the FBI in November of 2021?
Correct.
Okay. And when was the first time you spoke to the prosecution after that?
April of 2022.
Are you sure it wasn't May of 2022? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure. April or May.
Okay. In November, when the FBI approached you, you declined to speak to them, correct? You said you had a lawyer and you did not want to talk to them. Is that right?
Correct.
And between then and the first time that you spoke to them on May 12th of 2022, you took stock of the fact that you had stolen $2.7 million, correct?
I didn't steal $2.7 million.
I'm sorry?
I didn't steal $2.7 million.
How much did you steal?
I didn't steal.
You didn't steal anything at all?
No.
And you're just returning the money because you didn't steal it?
What returning money?
The forfeiture. If you didn't steal it, why are you forfeiting it?
I'm returning it based on the agreement that we have.
But the agreement is based on things you did, right? Well, you know what? Let's talk about the things you did. You told them that you did wrong by opening bank accounts that were associated with Mr. Gov't from July 2020 to July 2021. Correct?
Correct.
And they agreed to not prosecute you for that, correct?
That's what the agreement says.
They agreed not to prosecute you because you told them that you had engaged in financial transactions to hide funds, and that was between July 2020 and July 2021. Right?
Correct.
And then you told them that you had induced people to invest money in entities. And they told you they wouldn't prosecute you for that either, correct?
Induced? Can you repeat that?
The court said, Ms. Shroff.
Ms. Shrofa said, I'm reading the agreement itself, Your Honor. That's why I'm happy to rephrase.
Can I?
You told them, correct, that you did wrong things to have people invest and that was illegal. And they said, okay, we'll not prosecute you for that, correct?
That's not what the agreement says. It's fraud, a fraud scheme.
You tell me what the agreement says.
It was regarding a fraud scheme.
Okay. You told them you ran an unlicensed money service from October 2020 to July 2021. And they agreed to not prosecute you for that, correct?
Again, the agreement has that in regarding operating a non-licensed money servicing company.
Right. But you testified on cross today that you were a licensed remitter, right?
We had a license, yeah.
Say it again?
Yes, we did have a license.
So why did you ask the government to give you coverage for something that was perfectly legal?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor. Misstates his testimony.
The court said, sustained.
What unlicensed money services are they giving you coverage for?
Ms. Murray said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
Your non-prosecution agreement says that they won't prosecute you for operating an unlicensed money services business from October 2020 to July 2021. Correct?
If that's what it says, yeah.
What do you understand that to mean?
In terms of what exactly?
In terms of your non-prosecution agreement.
What's your question?
My question is, what is your understanding of the highlighted language? Which is your non-prosecution agreement?
Operating an unlicensed money services business from in or about October 20 through in or about July 2021.
Right. And what's the unlicensed money services business you ran?
Crane.
That's the unlicensed money services business you ran? I withdraw that. You testified, though, on direct that you had a license, right, to be a money services/business services remitter?
Correct.
Okay. So why do you need coverage?
In case my lawyer did not have it 100%.
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor, to the extent that this goes into any."
Ms. Shrofa said, "I have not asked anything about his lawyer."
The court said, "Sustained."
Could you take a look at page 1 of this document for me?
The court said, "I just want to remind all the attorneys to speak into the microphone so that the interpreters can hear you."
Yes, I'm here.
Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Okay. This is your non-prosecution agreement?
Correct.
It's addressed to your lawyer?
Yes.
And it's signed by you?
Yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Your Honor, at this time I move the document into evidence."
Ms. Murray said, "No objection."
The court said, "It is admitted."
Defendant's Exhibit 60529 received in evidence.
Ms. Shrofa said, "May I have the jury view it if they would wish?"
By Ms. Shrofa.
Now it's part of your coverage. Right, and if I could just go back to the same page as before, the government agreed to not prosecute you for other crimes you'd committed. Correct? Ms. Shrofa said, "If I could just make that larger for the jury and for the witness, please. Thank you." Correct?
Yes.
And one of the things that they gave you coverage for is?
Do you see that over there?
Ms. Shrofa said, and if we could just highlight that for him. The provision of materially false information concerning his, meaning you, personal expenses to a financial institution in or about 2016, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You did not know Miles Gov't in 2016?
No.
And you didn't know Ms. Wang in 2016, correct?
No.
What was the lie you told the bank?
I wanted to get a home modification for my house.
Ms. Shrofa said, "I move to strike." My question was, please, what was the lie?
The court said, "Did you finish your answer?"
The witness said, "No, I did not."
The court said, "Okay, so please allow him to answer."
So I was doing a home modification for my house, and I provided them with incorrect personal expenses.
You called them incorrect?
Yes. And
So by incorrect, do you mean it was like by mistake?
no. Not accurate information about my expenses. I inflated my expenses.
You inflated your expenses.
Correct.
And you gave it to a financial institution.
Yes.
And in 2016, were you working for a financial institution?
Yes.
Which one?
Citibank.
Did you lie to Citibank and inflate it with Citibank or with some other bank?
No, for my home modification, my home loan.
Okay. Who was the home loan with?
I think it was Wells Fargo.
So you lied to one bank, Wells Fargo, while working for another bank, Citibank?
Yes.
Okay. Let's look at No. 6. And that was in 2010 now, right? That's about 15 years ago. Or 14. I'm sorry. My math is bad. Right? You lied then also in 2010.
Correct.
Okay. Then you wrote bad checks all through 2014 and 15, 7 different times, correct?
Yes.
And what was the dollar amount, by the way, on all these bounce checks?
I don't remember exactly.
Okay. And V, 6, and 7 happened long before you met Yvette Wang and Miles Gov't, correct?
Correct.
You said a minute ago that you did not recall the dollar amount for the checks. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
Let me show you 3,500 to 166 at page 3. Ms. Schrofa said, "Just the witness, please." Do you see what's on your screen, sir?
Yes.
And does that help you in refreshing your recollection as to the dollar amount of these 6 and 7 checks that you bounced?
I don't remember exactly, but that's what I said.
What did you say?
10 to 20,000.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, objection. This is refreshing his recollection. If he's read it, we can take it down and he can speak to whether the document refreshed.
The court said, so if you don't recall something and then a document is offered to you to see whether that helps you remember, don't read from the document. Just say whether or not it helps you remember.
The witness said, "Doesn't remember. Doesn't help me remember exactly that amount." By Ms. Schrofa.
Does it help you remember approximately how much it was, each check?
No.
You have no recollection of the dollar amounts? I withdraw it.
The court said, sustained.
Ms. Murray said, objection.
Ms. Schrofa said, you can take that down.
By Ms. Schrofa.
Now let's go back to your non-prosecution agreement. Under this agreement, do you have any criminal liability for failure to file taxes?
Yes, I do.
And the government, through this non-prosecution agreement, gave you a way out from avoiding tax prosecution, correct?
Ms. Murray said, objection.
The court said you have to step up. Aye.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, so I don't know what the non-prosecution agreement says.
Ms. Murray said, the objection is to the form. The government gave a way out of having to do something. It's an improper form of the question. She can ask what the document says. The document speaks for itself.
Ms. Schrofa said, they did give him a way out. They said you can file your taxes in an amended form and you won't go to jail for failure to file taxes. That's the way out.
Ms. Murray said, that is not reflected in the documents. There was no, or you will go to jail if you don't file your taxes. It's impermissible and improper.
Ms. Schrofa said, that's common knowledge, you'll go to jail.
The court said, does the government agree that if X and then Y, that's the way you frame the question?
Ms. Schrofa said, okay, sure.
Continued on next page. In open court.
Ms. Schrofa said, could we put the non-prosecution back up? And if I could go to page 1. And page 1. If I could just have the first full paragraph.
By Ms. Schrofa.
And these are the no, I, to know. 8 is all the coverage the United States government gave you, right?
Correct.
And by the United States government, I mean Ms. Murray, Mr. Finkel, and Mr. Ferguson here. And of course Mr. Horton, who's not here, correct?
Who?
The 4 prosecutors, correct?
The 3 prosecutors that I see. I don't know the other person.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember him.
Okay. And who is it signed by on the bottom? No, on the top. The United States Attorney's Office. 3 signed there, right?
Damian Williams?
No. And underneath is the signature, correct?
Yes, the 3.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. And let's go to page 2. Actually, let's go back to page 1 at the bottom. You see the paragraph that says, moreover, if Khaled? You see that paragraph?
Yes.
Okay. And that tells you, does it not, that any testimony or information that you give, right, will be used against him in any criminal tax prosecution, correct? It says no testimony or other information given by you will be used against you in any criminal tax prosecution. Do you see that?
It says will be used against you, against him.
Continued on next page. By Ms. Schrofa.
Say it again.
It says will be used.
No testimony or other information given by him. So nothing you say to them will be used against you in a criminal tax prosecution. Is that your understanding?
It says will be used against him.
It says, no testimony or other evidence given by you will be. None of it will be used against you.
Okay.
Let's look at the next page. They give you a solution to your tax problems in the first paragraph?
Ms. Murray said, "There's personal identifying information on this page. We would just ask that it not be displayed."
The interpreter said, "I'm sorry, counsel. Can you repeat?"
Ms. Murray said, "There's personal identifiable information on this page. We ask that it not be displayed to the gallery."
Ms. Shrofa said, "It's public information in the bankruptcy. It's not personal."
The court said, "Not the personal identifying information. That should not be displayed."
Ms. Shrofa said, "There's no personal identifying information."
Ms. Murray said, "There are addresses in the second paragraph, Your Honor. That's what we're referring to."
Ms. Shrofa said, "Your Honor, may we approach again?"
The court said, "I see a reference to an individual and I see addresses."
Ms. Shrofa said, "Those addresses are the Airbnb properties that were turned over in the forfeiture. It's not his personal home."
The court said, "Is it the addresses that you are seeking to have redacted?"
Ms. Murray said, "Yes, Your Honor. It's not relevant that they're not the place that he lives. They're places that he is associated with and owns, and it's identifiable information. It just shouldn't be in the public record in front of the jury and the gallery."
Mr. Kamraju said, "Your Honor, they're going to appear in a forfeiture order at some point."
The court said, "These are the properties that were bought."
By the witness with the $2.7 million?
Ms. Shrofa said, "Exactly."
The court said, "That can remain in there. Go ahead."
Could the jury see page 2 of 4, and could you make it larger for them? So this agreement also allows you to file amended tax returns from 2009 to 2011. Correct?
Correct.
And the next paragraph, if I could have that blown up, are all the properties you bought with that $2.7 million, and that you were going to use for Airbnb and other investments, correct?
Correct.
And you had to forfeit all of these properties to the prosecution, correct?
Correct.
How many properties do you count, by the way?
7.
Thank you. And the agreement also requires for you to return to the government the net equity value of your interest in the properties or the full sum of $2.7 million. Correct?
Correct.
We can take it down, please. What it does not make you return is the salary you earned while working at Citibank, correct? When you were also working at G Clubs, right, or Saraca, correct?
Correct.
It does not require you to return to them the wages you were paid while you worked for Saraca. Correct?
No.
I'm correct, right? You didn't have to give your wages back?
I did not have to give my wages back, no.
And in return for this non-prosecution agreement, you testified yesterday your obligation is to tell the truth, correct?
My obligation is to tell the truth, yes.
And yesterday you testified on direct that it is you who decides whether or not you're being truthful, correct?
Correct.
So it is your understanding that if you decided that the statements you've made to the prosecutors when you met with them 19 times and the statements that you made in court are truthful, all of the charges against you will never come to a criminal charge, correct?
Correct, that's what the agreement says.
And only you get to decide if you're being truthful, right?
Correct.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Okay. I have nothing further."
The court said, "Redirect."
Ms. Murray said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Redirect examination. By Ms. Murray.
Good afternoon, Mr. Khaled.
Good afternoon.
We can start with the non-prosecution agreement if we could put that up again. That's Defense Exhibit 60529. You were asked some questions about your non-prosecution agreement on cross-examination just now. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Did your attorney sign your non-prosecution agreement?
Yes.
Who spoke to the government on your behalf regarding the terms of the non-prosecution agreement?
My attorney James.
I want to focus on the first paragraph, the first 3 Roman numerals of what we just looked at. And this is with respect to coverage under this agreement. Under this agreement, if you comply with the obligations under the agreement, the government agrees not to prosecute you for Roman numeral 1. Your participation in a scheme from in or about July 2020 through in or about July 2021, whereby, you Khaled, agrees with others to make, and yourself made, material misrepresentations to financial institutions for the purpose of opening and maintaining bank accounts for entities associated with Gov't into which fraudulent proceeds were deposited. Do you see that?
Yes.
And the second Roman numeral which provides you coverage for the following conduct: your participation in a scheme from in or about July 2020 through in or about July 2021, whereby you agreed with others to engage in, and yourself engaged in, financial transactions designed to conceal that certain funds were the proceeds of fraud. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then the third Roman numeral regarding coverage here provides coverage for your participation in a scheme from in or about July 2020 through in or about July 2021, whereby others made material misrepresentations to induce individuals to invest money in Gov't-related entities, some of which money you received. Do you see that?
Correct. Yes, I do.
And, Mr. Khaled, that reflects conduct that you actually engaged in during that time period. July 2020 through July 2021, correct?
Yes.
That includes the lies to banks that you've testified about in the last few days?
Yes.
And those lies were made in part in order to maintain bank accounts, is that right?
Correct.
After the government offered you a non-prosecution agreement, did you discuss it with your attorney?
Yes.
And this is a yes or no question, Mr. Khaled. Did your attorney provide you advice about the terms of the non-prosecution agreement?
Yes.
After receiving that advice from your attorney, did you accept the non-prosecution agreement?
Yes.
Now, on cross-examination you were asked some questions about our meetings. Do you recall those?
About what? Our meetings?
Our meetings.
Yes.
Do you recall the exact dates that we met on approximately 19 prior occasions?
Not the exact dates.
Do you recall every detail of those meetings that we had?
Not every detail.
Do you recall, for example, whether I was wearing a ponytail at each of those 19 meetings?
Ms. Strofa said, "Objection. I don't think that is a relevant thing to remember. You might want to remember some other thing, but I don't think a ponytail would count."
The court said, "You opened the door to the ponytail."
Ms. Strofa said, "I did, but it's not a memorable one, Your Honor."
The court said, "You may answer."
No, I don't.
During those meetings, did the government ask you questions about the transfers of money into and out of Crane's bank accounts?
Specifically, I don't remember.
Ms. Strofa said, "I'm sorry. I did not hear that."
I said specifically I don't remember.
Generally speaking, did the government ask you questions during those meetings?
General questions, yes.
Did those questions relate to, among other things, your work at Crane?
Yes.
Did you answer the government's questions truthfully?
Yes.
By the end of May of 2021, had Crane cleared at least approximately $100 million of G-Club's funds?
Yes.
And had you transferred more than approximately $2 million of those Crane funds to yourself to bank accounts that you held?
Yes.
And did that $2 million or more represent the 2% fee that you were entitled to under the PFA for the cleared funds?
Yes.
The court said, "One moment. What do you mean by cleared when you say the funds are cleared?"
The witness said, "That means we had a package reviewed, the KYC package and an indemnity package from the sender, and the names have been cleared, the payment has been seen, confirmed, and that's considered a cleared payment."
The court said, "Go ahead."
Ms. Murray said, "Thank you, Your Honor." And did you agree to forfeit the $2 million or more that you had taken of those funds to the government as proceeds of the crimes that you had committed?
Yes.
Now, you were asked questions about an affidavit that you submitted in a specific alliance case. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
And the date of that affidavit was May 17th of 2021. Do you recall that?
Can I see it again?
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Schroff, do you have a copy of that? May I approach, Your Honor?
The court said yes.
The date is May 17th.
And in that affidavit you were asked questions about, I believe it's paragraph 5, regarding Miles Gw's financial interest in certain monies or entities. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
And you said that Miles Gwa did not have a financial interest on paper. Do you recall that?
Correct.
What did you mean by on paper?
On the formation documents and on the wires that came in, his name was not a sender. And when we were going to send the money to the entities, his name was not on the paper for G Club.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, I'd like to move to admit Government Exhibit 411 and 411T. Sorry. Those are in, so I might have the wrong number. Just a moment, 413 and 413T pursuant to the stipulation. And the audio was authenticated by Mr. Khaled on Monday.
The court said, they are admitted.
Government's Exhibits 413 and 413T received in evidence. By Ms. Murray.
Ms. Loftus, if we could pull up 413 and 413T at page 7, please. If we could play 413 from approximately 3 minutes and 15 seconds and zoom in on the transcript. The jury doesn't have this transcript in their binders.
Media played.
Can you pause, Ms. Loftus? Mr. Khaled, in that portion of this call which was dated May 12, 2021. You referenced a Pacific subpoena. What was that a reference to?
I believe this one.
In the recording that we just listened to?
The same subpoena.
And the affidavit that you testified about on cross-examination. Was that an affidavit that you submitted in response to a subpoena you received in the Pacific Alliance litigation?
Yes.
And looking down in this transcript a bit, what did you mean in the last paragraph here? You could read the first sentence and explain what you meant by that?
We definitely have to paper out. That we have to put it in writing that the money don't belong to you or Miles' son.
Is it correct that the money in fact belonged to an entity and not to Miles Gwa or Miles' son personally?
Correct.
And is that consistent with the sworn statement of paragraph 5 of your Pacific Alliance affidavit?
Correct.
We can take that down, Ms. Loftus. On cross-examination you replayed portions of a recording of an interview of a potential candidate for G Clubs. Do you recall that?
Yes.
When you made the statements about potential candidate about the types of work that G Clubs was doing or the nature of the position. Who were you working for at that time?
At that time I had already established Crane, so I was working on Crane and Saraca.
And who, if anyone, was an individual you reported to in the course of that employment?
Yvette.
You were also asked questions about the time period when you worked at both Saraca and Citibank. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
Did you mislead each of your employers during that time as to the status of your employment with the other company?
No, they didn't ask me.
But when you were working at Saraca and still working at Citibank, did you deliberately not tell Saraca that you had Citibank employment?
I wasn't worried about Saraca.
How about Citibank? When you were still employed at Citibank, did you deliberately omit from Citibank the fact that you had accepted employment at Saraca?
Yes.
Did you tell the government about that fact that you had dual employment in violation of your employment contracts when you met with the government?
Yes.
And that was before you were offered a non-prosecution agreement, correct?
Correct.
You were asked questions about your bankruptcy on cross-examination. Do you recall those?
Yes.
Did you organize protests of any of the bankruptcy administrators in your case?
Protest?
Correct.
No.
Did you direct protest of any of the bankruptcy administrators' children or ex-spouses?
No scope.
Ms. Schrofa said, "Objection, Your Honor. It's beyond the..."
The court said, overruled. You may continue.
You were asked questions about the ownership of Crane. Do you recall those? Who did you report to regarding crane-related business decisions?
Yvette.
Who, if anyone, was involved in establishing Crane?
Yvette, and I believe Victor wanted to join it.
And if Yvette had instructed you to add someone to Crane as an employee, how would you have responded? If at all?
Ms. Schrofa said, objection.
The court said, you may answer.
I would have done it.
Now. You were asked questions about various of the recordings that we had listened to on your direct testimony in this case. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
You were asked about how one of those call recording ended in the middle of a sentence. Do you recall that?
I recall that, yeah.
Ms. Loftus, can we please pull up Government Exhibit 417 and 417T? And these are in the jury's binders if they would like to follow along. We're going to start around page 24 of the transcript, please. I don't have the exact timestamp. It will be 2 minutes before the end of the recording. Perfect.
Media played.
You can pause, Ms. Loftus. Mr. Khaled, the person who's indicated in this recording transcript as you. Who do you understand that person to be based on your participation in this call?
William J.E.
Thank you. We can continue.
Media played.
Mr. Khaled, does this recording end in the middle of a sentence?
No.
Does it end at the end of the call or meeting?
Yes.
And who was yelling at the end of this meeting?
Miles Gway.
You were asked on cross-examination about the portions of that recording excerpt we just listened to and read relating to a reference to a board of directors. Do you recall those questions?
Yes, I do.
At the time of this meeting in 2021, you didn't speak Mandarin, is that correct?
No.
Or understand Mandarin?
No.
And Alex Hadjikaralambis, did he speak Mandarin at the time?
No.
Or understand it?
I don't believe so.
And in listening to those portions of this recording, the Mandarin language that was spoken, were you able to determine what topics the speakers were discussing, setting aside the translations? Just the actual.
Ms. Schrofa said, objection to the testifying.
The court said, overruled. Continue.
Just focusing on the audio, were you able to understand what the topics were at the time?
No.
And sitting here today having now reviewed translations of portions of the various calls and meetings that had been conducted in Mandarin, and knowing what was said at that time, how do you feel sitting here today about what was discussed in Mandarin during those meetings?
Ms. Schrofa said, objection. What is the relevance of these meetings?
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Sure. And I'll break it down just a bit. At the time of these calls and meetings that you recorded, certain portions of the conversations took place in Mandarin, right?
Yes.
And at that time you didn't understand what was being discussed during the Mandarin portions, correct?
Correct.
And no one translated them for you at the time or told you what was discussed?
No.
Now having had the benefit of the translations of the portions of the calls and meetings and having reviewed them, how do you feel about what was being discussed in Mandarin during those calls and meetings?
Ms. Schrofa said, same objection.
The court said, overruled.
Secret planning of movement of money and putting us all in front of it.
And what do you mean by that, putting us all in front of it?
Alex was signer on that account, a signer on loan documents. I was a signer on a bank account. And they just used the names, used the accounts. And there was definitely a plan and a structure behind all that we were not privy to.
Ms. Murray said, if I may have a moment, Your Honor. Nothing further.
The court said recross.
Recross examination. By Ms. Schrofa.
You were played this call again now call 417, correct? If I could just pull the transcript for him. It will be on your screen over there and also for the jury. You recorded this call in April of 2021, correct?
Correct.
Where did you keep the call?
On my phone.
You recorded it for a purpose, right?
It wasn't a planned purpose, no.
You recorded it for no reason?
Again, I was trying to keep records.
And you wanted to know what you were keeping a record of, correct?
Correct.
This is in a foreign language, the recording, correct?
It's a what?
It's in a foreign language, correct?
Yes.
You never used Google Translate to figure out what they were talking about?
I was interested in the last piece.
Whatever piece you were interested in, sir. My only question is whether you used a simple app called Google Translate to figure out what they're talking about to determine if it in fact would even help you.
Help me with what? No.
Whatever the reason was that you recorded it.
No.
You didn't listen to it all? That's your testimony, right?
What do you mean listen to it?
You made the recording, correct?
Yes.
You discussed it with Ms. Murray, whether she had a ponytail that day or not. You discussed this recording with her, right?
After the fact, yeah. When we started meeting, yes.
When you discussed it with her, she had this translation for you, right?
Correct.
You discussed this with her almost more than a year after you recorded it, correct?
Correct.
You saved this recording for all that time, correct?
Yes.
You gave this very recording to your lawyers so that they could give it to the arbitrator, correct?
Correct.
This recording was played in the arbitration, correct?
Ms. Murray said, objection.
The court said, overruled. Funo.
I don't remember.
The English version of this document was introduced into evidence at the arbitration where you were physically present. Correct, and I remind you you're under oath?
Ms. Murray said, objection, per our discussion at sidebar, Your Honor.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
I don't remember.
This was one of the main pieces of evidence in the arbitration?
Ms. Murray said, same objection.
Let me try it a different way. You gave this recording to your lawyer, right?
Ms. Murray said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Does your lawyer speak Mandarin?
I don't know.
You don't know if your lawyer speaks Mandarin?
Ms. Murray said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Sitting here today, your testimony is that you had no idea what this recording said in English before you met with Ms. Murray?
Ms. Murray said, objection, mischaracterizes his testimony.
The court said, I'm going to allow the question.
Again, I don't remember.
You testified that this call ended, and that's what ended the recording, correct?
Yes.
With every recording you made, you and only you had the option of letting the recording continue or ending the recording, correct?
Correct.
You testified now that you thought during this conversation that there was secret planning, correct?
Sitting now here, yes.
Sitting here now, correct?
Yeah.
And sitting here now, your interests are completely aligned with the U.S. Attorney's Office, correct?
I don't know what their interests are.
You don't know what their interests are?
No.
You don't know what a prosecutor's interest is?
I don't know.
Did you meet with me?
No.
Did you sit down with me 19 times and review any recordings?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor. We've covered all this.
Ms. Shrofa said, I don't think so.
The court said, we don't know yet whether the witness met with Ms. Shroff.
No.
How about Mr. Kamraju over here met with him?
Who? No.
How about that young man over here, Mr. Kilgard, met with him?
No.
The only person you ever talked to is Ms. Murray, correct?
That's not correct.
Her team?
Plus others.
19 times?
Correct.
Hours at a time?
Correct.
Ms. Shrofa said, I have nothing further.
Ms. Murray said, just one question on redirect, Your Honor.
Redirect examination. By Ms. Murray.
Mr. Khaled, do you know what happened to the $46 million or so that Crane transferred to Lowell and Mitchell? Aaron Mitchell, do you know what happened to that money after you transferred it to Lowell and Mitchell?
No.
Recross examination. By Ms. Shrofa.
It wasn't your money to know anything about, correct?
Excuse me.
It was none of your business what happened with that $46 million, correct? It wasn't your money?
No, it wasn't.
Right. And no matter what Yvette told you, or no matter what Miles Gwa told you, or no matter what William J.E. told you, or no matter what Howard he told you, until the arbitrator ruled. You would not let go of that money, correct?
Ms. Murray said, objection, scope, form.
The court said, sustained on the scope issue.
Ms. Shrofa said, I have nothing further.
The court said, thank you, sir. You may step out.
Witness excused.